Hi, welcome to Author's Note.
Don't listen.
My name is Cass.
And my name is Teese.
And we took a pretty hefty break, but it does not feel like we took a break.
It was a 2-week vacation, and guess what? I spent that whole vacation doing stuff for this podcast anyway.
A lot happened.
Yeah.
An attempted coup, for one. You know, that one still hasn't quite sunk in for me yet.
No. It's the new year, which is also pretty bonkers to me. I feel like 2020 was both the longest and the shortest year of my life because everything blended together in one sexy little soup. So
I expressed the other night that I feel like we are still in a time that is nebulous pre-Thanksgiving. Like I don't feel like the holidays happened.
Sometimes I'm like, oh shit, Halloween's coming up. And I'm like, yeah, in 9 months, 10 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. Time is weird right now, but hopefully we'll be soon free.
Time is very weird. The world is still quite scary, but if you are taking a moment of levity, which I encourage all of you to do every now and again as you stay updated and informed about things that are happening in the world and staying safe inside of your home and lockdown if you can. Welcome. Take this as your moment of respite and reprieve for a little bit. It's important to take breaks. It's how we can, stay more aware and healthy as human beings. Welcome. Teese, what is one thing that you watched during our break, or one thing you enjoyed during our break that you'd like to share?
So first of all, I want to tell you that I finished watching season 1 of The Terror.
Hell yes.
You recommended to me, and I really enjoyed. However, this past weekend, I watched Stop Making Sense for the first time, and I just want to talk about this for a moment because...
Yeah, I don't know what this is.
Stop Making Sense is a documentary live concert footage directed by the guy who directed Silence of the Lambs, and
Interesting.
It's a Talking Heads concert. So
okay.
I watched a Talking Heads concert from 1984. And it was really nice. It was just a lovely time. I'm sort of a Talking Heads fan. Like, I like them, but I don't really know their discography as extensively. My mom liked them when they were a thing, and I knew some of their singles and stuff like that. And now as I've gotten older, I've started to enjoy them more and started to listen to them a little bit more, and I just like a good movie, and I miss concerts really badly. So I was like, I'm going to watch this. And it was wonderful. I thought it was shot really well. Everybody looked so excited to play. Tom Tom Club did Genius of Love because Tom Tom Club is founded by their bassist and drummer. So I was like, oh, Genius of Love. I didn't know it was happening. So that was exciting. So it was just really exciting for me, a person who likes both music and movies. So
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, so that's my one thing. What about you? Do you have anything that stood out during our 2-week nap?
I do want to give a quick shout out to a podcast I started listening to called Nightlight, which is horror stories all by Black writers. It is phenomenal. I highly suggest you check it out. It's really cool, and some of the stories are like really amazing. I listened to just last night a story called Malaika Descending and another story called Penny Incompatible, and they're both delicious, fantastic, highly recommend. But on the opposite end of that spectrum, Paddington 1 and 2 are truly God's favorite movies.
Yes! I'm so glad you watched them.
It came from a moment where I was having a difficult time, and I needed something that was just happy and bright and colorful. And somebody on my timeline earlier in the day had tweeted about Paddington, and I was like, you know what? I keep hearing great stuff about this little bear. Let me check him out. Paddington and Paddington 2, they are both phenomenal movies, and I would actually argue that 2 is almost better than the first one, if not of equal caliber. They are a visual delight in like every sense, and I don't know that I have seen children's movies that are quite so creative and imaginative and colorful in the way the Paddington movies are, and I'm very excited for the third one. 2021, you gotta bring me at least one good thing, and it's gonna be Paddington 3.
Let's go see it.
You know,
I don't
I
know
hope we're at a
how.
point where we can go and see it in theaters together. I
I
think
don't
that
know
would be
how,
magical.
but let's see it together. I
Hmm.
think it would be very nice.
I think it would be. But only when we're both vaccinated and it's safe.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, Cass.
Teese,
Yeah.
what's our topic this week?
Oh, Cass, today we're talking about something that is very important to me. And for people who know me, this has been a long time coming. Tell me, Cass, do you know anything about Neopets?
I've never heard of Neopets.
Okay. Do you know anything about the Church of Scientology?
I do know quite a bit about the Church of Scientology.
Great news. We're going to talk about how a lot of people think that Neopets was run by Scientologists today.
Oh, delicious. I do just want to jump back really quick. I did play Neopets as a child. I'm familiar with Neopets.
Okay.
I have no idea how it works, though.
Okay.
I do know that the Neopet are online, but I didn't understand any mechanics of it when I was a youngster.
Mm-hmm.
And my most recent exposure to Neopets is through you. And when my friends have to ask for parental permission to join Neopets, they all send the email to me.
That's really good.
So
I love that. So, can you tell me what you know about Neopets, like what the site is, how it works, anything like that?
I know that Neopets is a site with a predominantly yellow color scheme and old-looking interface.
Okay.
Where when you sign up, you get to pick out a pet, and there are some limitations of like what pets are available to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are like mini games you can play, and there's like a trading board, and there are forums where like people RP and share art, and there are fairies, and I never really liked the design of the fairies. I think as a child I had a loop, which is like the wolf creature.
Mm-hmm.
That's about. There's also pets, which are pets of your pets. And then there are pets, which are pets for your pets.
Yes. So...
There are paintbrush. Okay, at this point, I'm just listing Neopets errata that I know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not helpful to anyone. Teese, can you explain to me concisely what Neopets is? What
Yes.
Neopet do?
So, first of all, I will be grinning from ear to ear while we talk about this whole thing because I have been playing Neopets since 2002 and I have never stopped. I've actually been published on Neopets, both the site and offsite, talking about the site and how it functions. I've presented panels about Neopets at conventions, and
one might say you're a Neopet scholar.
I really am. Like, my English professor in college and undergrad was like, why don't you go to fan studies? Like, go to University of Iowa for fan studies for Neopets. And I was like, I don't want to go to school ever again once this is done. So Neopets is an interactive pet simulator site that was created in 1999 by Adam and Donna Powell. Some basic information is that you could change your pet's appearance, you could travel lands, dress up said pets, play games, and it's been around for the past 21-ish years. And in its heyday, it was very popular, upwards of over like hundreds of thousands, even into the millions of page views per day. There were site-wide interactive plots and mysteries. There's contests that you could partake in. And there was even a video game release, there was cereal released, and there was merchandise. Neopets now exists today, but due to the crash of Flash, which is literally happening on the 12th, the site has kind of been a little bit of a tizzy. Right now, the dedicated fan base are millennials, people in their 20s to 30s. There are some people who are older.
Has Neopets not converted itself over to HTML? It hasn't? Are you kidding me?
So, they knew. And my God.
Yeah, everyone knew, which is why there's been like a huge restoration movement.
There was a huge restoration movement, and it's going terribly.
Oh no.
And half of the site is broken right now. Literally, if I want to get to my safety deposit box, I have to click 6 different links just to get to it. I can't use...
I want to clarify, your Neopet safety deposit box?
Yes, my Neopet safety deposit box. It's just...
Not your real life safety deposit box.
I don't have that much money to have a real life safety deposit box.
No offense, but...
So, Neopets now is mostly held together with duct tape and some glue and a little bit of string. Oof. WD-40 maybe. And
yeah, for anyone who maybe isn't as online, but is curious about this. Adobe has, and most web browsers are every web browser is discontinuing their use and support of Flash, which was used to play a lot of games. It's what a lot of animations ran off of on like Newgrounds, etc. But there's been like a very big, communal restoration process so that we don't lose this part of internet history, to convert all of those over to HTML. And most websites have been pretty good about converting everything over to HTML so that they don't lose this massive piece of like entertainment value and also, again, just internet history. But apparently Neopets hasn't.
It really hasn't. There's maybe about 5 games that they switched over to HTML. They don't really properly work, and the site is trying to appeal to children again, and it's a shame because instead of just making a functioning app, because they do in fact have 3 different game apps that have all failed terribly, they just made the whole entire site mobile, which has in turn made the site just barely usable. And recently they released a Hot Topic nostalgia t-shirt line, but even those are really messy because that it's really lazy. I could talk about it for hours, but I won't. To follow up, what do you know about Scientology, Cass?
I know that Scientology was founded by L. Ron Hubbard, and it was his second attempt to begin a religion as a means of securing financial security for himself, basically. The large portion of my knowledge on Scientology admittedly does come from the Going Clear HBO documentary, which I think is a pretty good entry point into understanding some of the really disturbing facets of Scientology. And I'm also familiar with it through Ross and Carrie of Oh No, Ross and Carrie's attempt to join Scientology. Well, they successfully joined Scientology, and then they were excommunicated and put on the list. But Scientology is a very profitable cult, which was really, it started, I think, like a lot of cults, in that it was a really seemingly successful life coaching program in which people could enter and go into these sort of interviews with another individual and work out a lot of their, internal problems and such. And I think a lot of that was also co-opted then by NXIVM in their recruitment process. L. Ron Hubbard was a deeply unhealthy individual who did some terribly cruel things to the people in his life. And people in the higher echelon of Scientology have been treated really horribly, both by the Church of Scientology and their peers within that program. And I'm talking like human rights violations.
Yup. Yeah.
Scientology is a cult which sought, tax-exempt religious status for monetary purposes and framed that to its followers as a huge war against, Scientology and all that they stood for, despite the fact that Scientology really isn't a religion. And there are a ton of jokes about, how wild and out there a lot of the beliefs of Scientology are when you get to that higher level of status that you are then, made privy to, wherein like L. Ron Hubbard developed this entire lore, and because he was an incredibly prolific science fiction writer, a lot of that overlaps then with Scientology, because when he took his Dianetics work, which was his first attempt at a religion, and reframed it into Scientology, he borrowed from, his science fiction work. And so there's all this idea of like, you are an individual who is being used as a host for all of these dark and evil entities which are giving you traumatic memories, and you have memories of past lives that you have to go through. And there are many people who have spoken much more clearly and with greater education about Scientology than I, but that is my, baseline understanding of Scientology.
Okay, that pretty much wraps it up. I took 3 sources that give 3 brief descriptions about what Scientology is, because my only education of Scientology has been through Going Clear, knowing jokes about Tom Cruise, and last podcast on the left's very long deep dive into Scientology. So kind of a similar experience. And
I don't like Tom Cruise. I don't trust him.
Don't trust him.
I also don't trust John Travolta.
Yeah, me neither.
I do not trust celebrity spokespeople for religions in general, but especially for Scientology.
So I have a brief what is Scientology from Wikipedia, from the Church of Scientology page, and CNN. And they all kind of give different pictures, which is why I wanted to put all three in, because I feel like even a religion can technically be a cult. Like, I mean, religion, opiate to the masses, whatever the fuck you want to say, but I feel like there's something to say about how we perceive a religion in the current time when it's still in its infancy.
Yeah.
And granted, fuck Scientology. Like, here I'm on the record to say, put me on the list. I don't give a shit. Like, you're never getting my money. So, according to Wikipedia, Scientology is a set of beliefs and practices invented by American author L. Ron Hubbard and an associated movement. It has been variously defined as a cult, a business, or a New Age religious movement. Hubbard initially developed a set of ideas which he represented as a form of therapy called Dianetics. Thank you, Wikipedia. Followed by, developed by L. Ron Hubbard, Scientology is a religion that offers a precise path leading to a complete and certain understanding of one's true spiritual nature and one's relationship to self, family, groups, mankind is with a capital M, all life forms, the material universe, the spiritual universe, and the supreme being being in caps. The ultimate goal of Scientology is true spiritual enlightenment and freedom for all, courtesy of the Church of Scientology website. And then CNN's is, at the core of Scientology is a belief that each human has a reactive mind that responds to life's traumas, clouding the analytic mind and keeping us from experiencing reality. Members of the religion submit to a process called auditing to find the source of this trauma, reliving those experiences in an attempt to neutralize them and reassert the primary of the analytic mind, working toward a spiritual state called clear, from CNN. So you pretty much summed it up. But these 3 short sentence paragraphs, whatever you want to call them, kind of also put everything in a small package. So,
and I think it's important too to see how the church itself presents itself and how it describes
that's
itself.
Why I wanted to add it in. Yes.
Yeah. And we're obviously not here to debate, the morality of Scientology. That's not our discussion for the day. But I think any religion that you have to pay to be a part of and pay to receive quote unquote enlightenment or, access the spiritual text upon which you are predicating your belief system, I don't think that's religion.
No.
I think religion needs to be free and accessible for all, no matter circumstance. And Scientology is not that. But
so, what does Neopets and Scientology have to do with each other? So, the first person that we need to talk about when we're talking about this is Doug Doring. And Doug Doring is the owner, CEO, president of Age of Learning and the Doring Company. So, in short, this is a guy with too much money.
Okay.
Age of Learning focuses on children's entertainment and education, while the Doring Company is more of a marketing firm that works with names such as Baskin-Robbins and Capitol Records. Doug Doring has been around the block. He kind of was a rags to riches story. He started the Doring Company in the mid-'80s, got super lucky, and made bank. And he also happens to be a Scientologist who loves to give money to the church. So much so that the Church of Scientology even made a new level of donation trophy for how much the Dorings have donated to the Church of Scientology.
Oof, okay.
Yeah, so they're one of the biggest. People are suggesting that Dorings have donated over 20 million, but people who are on the inside or who have left the Church of Scientology have reason to believe that the Dorings have even donated more than 20 million. So,
it's a lot of money.
In 2000, Doring became the chairman and CEO of Neopets Inc., meaning he helped monetize the site of Neopets. Okay. So now we're gonna want to.
What does monetization look like on Neopets? Is it just ads on the page? Is it what's the deal, Teese?
So, excellent question that you asked. Back in 1999, when Neopets launched, Adam and Donna made this as a passion project. They kind of got ghosted, and then they were like, fuck it, we could just do it by ourselves. And so November 15th, the site launches, and then December, they fly from Miami back home to England to spend Christmas with the family, and the site shuts down. The servers crash. It's about $6,000 a month now to keep up with server demands, and these are two young professionals who weren't really making money from this. So they,
especially like early aughts, that's a huge chunk of money.
It's rough. So they got in contact with a friend of a friend, and the friend of the friend, who happened to be the investors, ended up being Doring and Co. So this leads us to Doring becoming the CEO of Neopets. And this sucks because at the end of the deal, Adam and Donna only owned 18% of Neopets. So, like, you know, in Shark Tank, when they're like, I want 40% of your company, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, the sharks don't own the company. They just are a partner in it. And all of the investors took pieces of Neopets, and Adam and Donna were only left with 18% between the two of them. Not even 18% each, but 18% between the two of them. Yeah, which really, really sucks. So,
which, you know, obviously means at any sort of shareholder meeting, they have very little power and sway anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, all of the people who were shareholders, besides the Powells, were Scientologists. So, luckily, they didn't really care that much about the site. They were already... what's the word I'm looking for? They already rented out the office space to Neopets, so that's how they partially kind of got in the pocket, that Neopets rented out the space for the company, and then Doring and Co. were the shareholders. So they were like, okay, well, we have to clearly accept these people as our shareholders because we need this space, we need this money, XYZ.
Yeah.
We need the site to run because it was rapidly increasing in page views and stuff like that. For the most part, Adam and Donna had pretty much creative control over the website. However, the executives, so Doring and Co., suggested something called immersive advertising, which later the Doring Group copywrote the concept of immersive advertising, which is where there would be shops dedicated to McDonald's, or you would have a game that was like of find this character from this upcoming movie. So
find Grimace.
Yeah, find Grimace hiding.
Where is he? And I wish to speak to him.
Like, for instance, I remember there being a How to Train Your Dragon item search game. There was an Allie and AJ personality quiz. There were McDonald's items that you could buy because there was actually...
Speaking of Allie and AJ, did you listen to the explicit drop of Potential Breakup Song?
I did.
So good.
It is really good. So it kind of was one of those things that, is this morally right? Because you're advertising to children who are in the single digits. Like, so this happens around like 2003, 2004. I started playing Neopets when I was 7 in 2002. So...
And this is before, you know, we have the FCC guidelines stating that, you know, ads and sponsorships have to be explicitly disclosed, and like immersive marketing like that is incredibly effective. And I mean, like, it was copywritten for a reason because it worked.
Yeah. And I mean, even in, I don't know how much in the recesses of other people's minds we know about Neopets, but Neopets eventually went on to have McDonald's toys and were something that you could buy at Limited Too. They had Zazzle shirts, they had action figures, they had video games, they had like all this stuff. And part of it was because of Doring, even though, however, after 2005, the site was sold. But that's a different story. So a lot of the merchandising and branding that we see is in a post-Doring Neopets. It's actually a Viacom Entertainment Neopets that we're looking at. We gotta ask ourselves, like, did the Church of Scientology try any bullshit with Neopets? And the answer is yes and no. So
sounds about right.
Yeah, so at one point there was somebody that was a Scientologist that was like the head of education on Neopets, which is kind of bullshit because Neopets doesn't really teach you anything educational.
Was there a proliferation of the Scientology doctrine via Neopets at all?
So mostly no. In an interview from People Make Games on YouTube, and Adam and Donna talked to People Make Games about this, which I found really fascinating. And they did a lot of explaining and understanding and talking and clearing up some myths and stuff like that, which was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Investors actually did want to include Scientology education into the site, but as soon as it was suggested, Adam and Donna did in fact shut it down because they were kind of the creative heads of the site.
Mm-hmm.
And there really is no piece of Scientology information in the site. However, there is one Easter egg, which I find is really funny. And for people who play Neopets, the 3, as in ambition, greed, and revenge from the Battle for Meridel plot, is actually inspired by 3 Scientologists that were given a tour of the office space that Adam, Donna, and the artist all thought looked really evil. So
Cutting.
they were used as villains within the Battle for Meridel plot, and they have a Neopedia page and stuff like that, which I find is really, really funny.
Oh gosh.
And so
that's a risky ball game.
Yeah, I know.
With your investors.
I know.
This kind of looks like Greg. No, it's not Greg. Why would you say that about Greg? That's so mean.
So we got to ask ourselves, like, well, what did the owners of, like, what did Adam and Donna think originally of Neopets? Were they uncomfortable? Were they okay with this? What was going on behind closed doors? And in 2015, both of them did an AMA, and Nignog Pattywog of Reddit asks, is it true that Scientology played a role in the organizational structure of the Neopets staff at one point? And Cass, do you want to read that answer?
Yeah, Donna wrote,
yes, although we were not aware of it at first as we were totally naive. Basically, the first group of investors, who were the guys that had spare office space in Glendale as their automotive firm was being downsized, were Scientologists. When we realized, it was a bit of a shock. Somewhat awkward moment when you realize you started the biggest entertainment site visited by millions of children and teens, but the upper management you just signed the company over to are part of some weird religion that is banned in some countries. The company was structured like a Scientology org. It didn't really change anything that I noticed apart from some odd test the interviewees had to take consisting of questions like which straight line seemed friendlier and stuff like that. We also had a lot of obscure celebrities coming around the office for tours. At one time, there was some talk about putting Scientology education on the site, but we killed that idea pretty sharpish. Adam and I made sure that it never made its way onto anything site-related. Religion and politics were 2 big no-nos for us as far as site content went. Can't say the discussions we had to keep it that way were much fun, though.
So there you have it. And you gotta ask yourself, well, what did Doug Doring do after this? Guess what? He owns Age of Learning, which owns ABC Mouse. And ABC Mouse is a children's educational site. So they did, in fact, achieve the goal of having an educational site. And actually, Doring got the idea for something like ABC Mouse when he was working on Neopets. On Doring's website, it even says that Doring's experience leading Neopets as one of the world's most popular online communities for kids led him to the insight that it might be possible to create an online experience that was both highly engaging and educational. He realized that a world-class early learning curriculum designed by a team of PhDs, teachers, and learning experts could be combined with games and activities in a fun online world that would help children develop critical learning skills and a lasting love of learning. So Doring clearly got the idea while working on Neopets and then jumped after 2005 to slowly develop ABC Mouse. And in the long run, Doring actually sold Neopets, and Adam and Donna sold their shares too, in 2005 for $160 million to Viacom Entertainment. And Viacom Entertainment is responsible for stuff like the Nickelodeon channel, which deals a lot with families, and Viacom has hands in ABC, and Viacom has a lot of hands in a lot of places, you know, a lot of fingers in a lot of pies. Now that ABC Mouse is a thing, that's Doring's main bread and butter, and I mean,
do we know if ABC Mouse is used as a, I don't want to say recruitment tool, but recruitment tool for Scientology?
I looked into it, and I don't think so. I think it's just educational more than anything. However, the way that ABC Mouse works to get people to keep using ABC Mouse is really predatory. in a way that it suggests that you can in fact use ABC Mouse for free during COVID. However, if you do try to sign up for ABC Mouse, it will say that you need to contact the superintendent of your whole entire school. So it's not like, oh, you get to use ABC Mouse for free. It's more like the school system gets to use ABC Mouse for free after the school system has paid for it. And it's really hard to get out of your ABC Mouse contract, and all of that kind of the usual predatory practices like that Noom does, and
which is awful and terrible, especially when you're a parent just trying to seek resources for your child.
Yep.
But I think, if anything, it is a good lesson in being aware of where your children's media is coming from and who is paying for that. You know, like what kind of message they seek to promote. And I'm talking, you know, beyond just what the site will tell you, but seeing who owns the company which your children are benefiting from, etc. And I know it's hard. It's really hard to find kids resources that you can trust.
And even now with ABC Mouse, Doring is still profiting and partnering with other Scientology-based groups the same way that all the executives at Neopets were Scientologists. The most glaring offense is in 2018 when ABC Mouse actually had a post-Super Bowl 2018 commercial. The commercial was eerily similar to a Church of Scientology recruitment commercial.
A lot of their branding has a very similar aesthetic and vibe to it, I will say.
That's because
which is a bit sinister.
Yeah, well, that's because they worked with the same company, which is TXL Films, and they have patterns, you know? And TXL Films is owned by the son of one of the Church of Scientology heads. So no surprise there. And even in Going Clear, they talk about how they, as in the people that are interviewed, talk about how it's a bubble. When you work in Scientology, you're suddenly on this list, and you get
it has to be
pass.
to work as a cult.
Yeah, so
you have to be an insular community.
Yeah, so it's about paying and giving work to your community. However, all these bitches are rich as hell. So like, it's suspicious, you know?
Well, and I'm sure on some level, too, that when you are a massive donor to the church in that fashion, that you are also, you know, set up to easily advertise within the church, because I do know that the Church of Scientology, one of the appeals of it, I guess, is that they offer childcare. I mean, many religious operations do, especially when you're attending service. But if you're already offering child service, and you can say, hey, why don't we promote, you know, ABC Mouse, if it's not, you know, directly spreading doctrines of Scientology, it'll at least come with the caveat that, well, it's not spreading a doctrine of anything else, so it can in that way be marked safe by the church, you know.
Scientology does a really good job of saying, look at who you may bump elbows with. And even after Adam and Donna sold their shares and went on to different ventures, after the deal was done, they actually got a call up from the Church of Scientology, and the voice actress for Bart Simpson gave them a tour of the Church of Scientology's offices, including showing them L. Ron Hubbard's original office and shit like that, and
of course
took them to fancy dinner.
Put your recognizable people for it. I mean, for a long time there was a rumor about Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith being a part of Scientology, and a lot of that too comes from when Scientology was originally presenting itself much like NXIVM. It was a lot of, like, you know, life coaching stuff. It wasn't necessarily about spirituality at first. It was about improving your own life through these auditing sessions. And so, like, it's also, it's easy to attract, you know, young hopefuls, especially when you're based in, you know, what is it, like Hollywood, California. Like, you're gonna attract people who are looking for life coaching, who are looking for guidance, who want to try something new, who maybe want to be a little bit more spiritual. Like, that's how they got John Travolta. That's how they got Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Did Adam and Donna join? No, they immediately bounced, and I think they're now living back in London. So that's that. And
Neopets is British?
Yeah, Neopets was created by two British people. That's why it's spelled, fairy is spelled like that, and color is spelled like that. It's all British spelling if you look at the website.
It's been a very long time since I was on Neopets.
Yeah. So you got to ask yourself, like, was Neopets actually owned by Scientologists? Yes and no, so sorta.
Yes.
I mean,
but not in the sinister way people paint it as. Yeah.
Neopets, yeah, I guess it kind of was owned by Scientologists, but it was not created by Scientologists, and it was not used as a Scientology tool. So the next time some dumb fuck is like, well, Neopets was a Scientologist website, you're gonna be like, no! Teese of Author's Note, don't listen, told me that is incorrect. And then you could tell them exactly what happened.
You can even share this podcast with them.
Yeah!
Which is a great way to help support us.
Mm-hmm. And I would also like to make 2 quick shout outs. Thank you so much to both Marilyn Young via Medium and Tony Ortega's blog. Both of these people have written several posts about ABC Mouse, the Dorings, Scientology in general. You could easily, when I was Googling just stuff about this topic, their names came up more than once. So I would like to give a shout out to our sources, as well as if you enjoy Neopets and you kind of want to know a little bit more about the current happenings and workings of Neopets, I would highly suggest Neo Nostalgia, which is a Neopets podcast, and both of the podcasters are very, very delightful people, and I enjoy it whenever I do get a chance to listen to it.
And Teese, what's your Neopets Twitter?
My Neopets Twitter is Count Von Roo, COUNTVONROO, after the actual Neopets NPC.
If you enjoyed the episode, maybe consider sharing it with a friend. If you want to support us financially, we do have a Ko-fi that is KOFI, and we are Authors Note Pod over there. There's a link to it in our card, which is on our Twitter. Our Twitter is Authors Note Pod. You can reach out to us via email at authorsnotepod@gmail.com. And if you don't feel like sharing it with a friend, maybe leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Those are all great ways to help us out if you're not able to give at this time, which is totally okay. If you want to find more of my work personally, you can find me on Twitter at Valhethella. That's VALHETHELLA. Teese, if people want to find more of you, where can they find you?
You could find me on Twitter at Vicuñad, VICUNAD. Our theme music was done by James Wyulo. You could find him on Bandcamp under James Y.
And our cover art was done by the wonderful Nyaliest. You can find her ranting and raving about Final Fantasy XIV and rhythm games on Twitter at Nyaliest. That's NYALLIEST. Until next time, thank you so much for listening. Stay safe out there and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Let's be friends on